I remember it was Thanksgiving, and the headache got so bad. He went into the bedroom, and he was crying uh, because the pain was so bad. And so I knew at that point, that was the point, because the whole family was there, and the whole family was asking what was going on, and I had to explain the situation. I think hearing myself say what was happening made me realize maybe we need to try to work harder in finding a solution. So we ended up getting his neurologist. His neurologist looked at him for something he called cluster migraines, because he was also complaining of eye pain. An MRI was scheduled. The MRI took place, and that was when there was a suspicion for something called pseudotumor cerebri. Pseudotumor cerebri is when your body makes too much spinal fluid. The spinal fluid surrounding your brain ends up putting pressure on the brain, thus causing headaches, as well as pressure on the eyes, thus causing eye pain or even temporary blindness. This seemed to make sense, but they wanted to do something called a lumbar puncture to kind of see the levels of where he was at. So that was scheduled. And that was when the diagnosis was set. After the lumbar puncture, they told me he was at a 31, I believe. And normal pressure inside your spine, inside your head, needs to be about in the 15 to 18 cc range, and Michael was at 31. So they drained him down to a 16. And explained to me what pseudotumor cerebri was, that it was most likely going to be a lifetime struggle, that this is something that happens periodically. The biggest threat of it would be blindness. We are looking at maybe several more lumbar puncture procedures. We're looking at medication. We're looking at possibility of having a shunt in order to drain the fluid. I was looking at my little boy, sleeping at the time, and just trying to imagine his life with these repeat episodes through the hospital, and just wanted to know if maybe there was a preventative form of treatment, not necessarily a reactive form of treatment, which is what I was receiving.
So what we did is we had another headache episode, so he went to the hospital on a Friday. We did a lumbar puncture. On Sunday morning, he woke up and was complaining about his eye hurting, and that's a trigger to go in because we don't want to have the vision loss. So on Sunday, we had spoken to his neurologist. We went back in. We're admitted to the hospital for a lumbar puncture, plus an overnight monitoring just to make sure what was going on with him. We did another MRI just to make sure everything was good. The challenge at that point for us was that it was 12 months between hospital visits for lumbar punctures, and we went from 12 months to 2 days. It was a really difficult thought process of how often is he going to go through this. Then we started talking again about the shunt, about how difficult it was going to be. It was pretty quick when we started looking for other alternatives that didn't require surgery every couple of days, didn't require surgery every year or ever, hopefully. And it's at that point where we were able to find the Blair chiropractic method, and Dr. Montoya here in the Valley was somebody who did that. We started talking to him and kind of figured out more about what Blair was about and how it could possibly help Michael. After the first visit, you started to see some differences over time. We've really been able to make some serious progress on, moving away from headaches, moving away from eye pain specifically. So he does get a headache every now and then, but no more than the rest of the kids. So we've made great strides to see a lot of his challenges, not just the headaches he's had. He's been diagnosed with ADHD. He has chronic tics. So a lot of that is moving away as we continue down this path.
And chronic tic is motor tics, otherwise known as Tourette syndrome. So he has ADHD, he has chronic tic syndrome, which is Tourette syndrome. He also has OCD with an anxiety disorder. He was diagnosed with those at 4 years of age. Just to backtrack on what James was saying, when we took him to the hospital on Friday and brought him home on Sunday, he had another episode. We ended up having to turn around and bring him back to the hospital again. And I remember bringing him home. It was a Wednesday. It was a Tuesday. After the second drain. He was drained, I think it was at a 29, and they drained him back down to a 16. So he was drained before at a 16 on Friday. He was at a 31, probably. He normally floats between 30 to 32. He was drained then to 16. Then on Sunday was complaining of a migraine again, crying again, saying that it was hurting again. And then I called his neurologist, who told me this has to be a spinal headache. This can't be another episode of increased spinal fluid. Then Michael went blind. We ended up sending an email out to our church and asked for prayer. We contacted, the neurologist contacted the hospital and got him in. He was getting scheduled for his second lumbar puncture in less than a week. And he was drained again, back down to a 16. I was surprised he went back up to a 29 in a matter of 2 days. What makes this profound is that on Tuesday, it was a Monday, it was actually a Monday, he was in my room, the darkest room of the house, crying in a ball. He wouldn't eat, he wouldn't drink, just in tears, saying how he wanted to go home, that he was done with this body and that he wanted Christ to give him a new body and he wanted to go home. When you hear your 7-year-old child tell you he wants to go home, it affects you. So I knew what we were doing wasn't working. I knew the medication he was on was not working. And I knew that this reactive form of care was not the answer. So I had received an email from my pastor's wife about a chiropractor, but a different form of chiropractor, because I had called several chiropractors and they all told me they couldn't help. Some told me that they could try, but that they wouldn't be able to help him. This one was different. I called on a Tuesday. It was Dr. Tony. His office was closed, and I explained to him what was going on. And I put the phone down and I just thought about things and ran through my mind any other options that we could look at, naturopathy, herbal care, just anything that could really provide an answer. The phone rang, and it was Dr. Tony, and he said he could help. And at that point, it was like taking off a lead blanket. I could go to my son and say, we have an opportunity for an answer. We don't have an answer, but we have an opportunity for an answer. Because I knew that we were going to have to take him back to the hospital unless we found something different. He was already complaining of all the same symptoms that was telling me his levels were already increasing, that he was due another lumbar puncture. And to get Dr. Tony, somebody a professional to say, I think I can help, was revolutionary. So I remember the day I took him in, it was a Wednesday. And we were in the car. He had a blanket over his head. He had my sunglasses on. He was sobbing uncontrollably. The music was off. I had left the kids at home with the babysitter. And we walked into the office. Dr. Tony was nice and pleasant, handed me some paperwork, and my son laid in my lap. He couldn't lift his head. When we went back and talked to him, and I explained to him his history, the diagnoses of the previous neurological issues at 4 years, the daily headaches at 6 years, the diagnoses at 7 years, and this just downward spiral of what was going on. He told me that he believed he could help, and he explained to me what we were going to do, and relief started there. And I can tell you that after that appointment, when he had adjusted Michael's neck, we went home, and actually Michael let me listen to the radio, and it was soft. The blanket was off, the sunglasses were still on, but I was able to listen to the radio. And when we got home, the kids were able to play softly in the living room. And he eventually moved out of my bedroom, and by the end of that night, he was on the floor playing with his brother and his sisters in the living room, softly. And by the next day, no headache.
And we had, because of the hospital stays, we had frequent visits with the neurologist. After just a few visits with Dr. Tony, we went back, and the neurologist put us through all the tests, and you could see the baffled look on his face, and he's, it's like, so what did you do different? Because he obviously went from almost a worst case to doing very, very well. So we kind of stepped around it a little bit, because chiropractic care can not always be accepted, and just say we're working with them, and as we've continued to get better, we've talked about it, but Michael rarely gets a headache anymore. We don't have him on any medication. We used to have him on a series of medication through most of his life, where we had to give him something, and then we tried something else, we tried something bigger. Now we don't have anything. He's a very active still, but he's a boy again. He doesn't have to always cup his ears. He doesn't have to have it always quiet wherever we are. It's very nice to be able to take him somewhere and listen to the radio, or not to have to worry about piano practice or anything else. So it's been a remarkable turnaround.
When we were in Phoenix and he was diagnosed with pseudotumor cerebri, he was started off with Diamox. He was at 125 milligrams 4 times daily. In addition to the Diamox, he had bad reaction to it. He had nausea. And so for the nausea, they gave him magnesium. He also was having cramps in his legs. For the cramps, vitamin B. So these actually aren't too bad, and we were very blessed because our neurologist he doesn't push the meds as much as other neurologists do. I've heard stories about other neurologists, and even though our neurologist is very well versed in pharmaceuticals, I do like the fact that he is open to other forms. Michael was also supposed to take potassium, which I don't have anymore. The Diamox wasn't helping, so they switched him to I don't remember the real name for this, but it's furosemide. Begins with an L.
I remember.
They switched him to this momentarily to see if this would help, kind of because of the side effects, if this would help him. It's also a diuretic. He didn't like this. It didn't help at all. So we went back to Diamox. When he started to get his headaches again every day, then they upped our Diamox dosage from 125 4 times daily to 500 milligrams twice a day. So that's this one right here. This is also Topamax for the migraines, because this wasn't helping the migraines. So he had to take this in addition to the Topamax every day. After seeing Dr. Tony, this was the first thing I was able to get rid of, was the Topamax. That went away pretty quickly. We didn't really have anything as horrific as we had before. Then we were able to minimize the Diamox, and now he's on it. We've seen Dr. Tony for how long has it been?
A few months now.
A few
4 months, maybe 5 months.
Okay. So if we've seen him for 4 or 5 months, we are now only taking Diamox on an as-needed basis when Michael is complaining of headache. I'll give him a Diamox, and I'll give him children's ibuprofen. And I go in to see Dr. Tony, and it's most likely just a neck adjustment that he needs. And then he's fine again.
So during the first visit, what was interesting to me is he asked, did your son ever get dropped? And it's like, well, no, we never dropped him, though his nickname was Crash because he was always running into things. One specific incident was we were at church, and he tripped on something and fell and hit the corner of the refrigerator that was there. Gave him a really nice goose egg on his forehead that took a little while to go away. But as Dr. Tony described life events that happen after that, because what happens is you put out a bone up at the top of your neck, that you get certain symptoms. And he basically walked through Michael's medical history with the tics and the ADHD and everything else. So it was interesting to see that basically it all lined up very cleanly and very, very directly with what Michael's life was. So the Blair method basically is working with the vertebrae that's right, up almost at the top, because as it gets out, it pinches a nerve, which then sends a signal that says, more brain fluid needed, and then it just continues to produce brain fluid, and then ultimately you get to where we were, which is where he was getting daily headaches, and we were getting frequent lumbar punctures. So it really is not a traditional form of chiropractic care, because you're not adjusting the rest of the spine, but just the top.
And there's no cracking of the neck involved. He's just putting it back in place, that one top vertebrae. And it's just amazing to realize how much impact that vertebrae has on the rest of the body. So we have seen that Michael has calmed down. We've heard from several people around us that he has calmed down. And we've also seen he still has his tics, but we're seeing that diminishing. We're seeing the OCD anxiety I haven't seen in a long time. If anything is happening, it's behavioral. It's not anything that I think would even relate to that diagnosis. It's going to take time because of the severity of his case and what was going on throughout his young life. But what has been happening has been leaps and bounds over what we were trying to figure out the few years prior.
Mm-hmm.
His
neurologist was noted very, we went from monthly visits with being on standby to having, we went almost immediately from 2 hospital stays. It was like a 1 month checkup. Then we almost immediately went to 3 months and then 4 months, and they're spacing out very fast because he's doing so well. And we've kind of walked through some of the stuff that we've done to help him. So the neurologist has seen a tremendous change from where we were to where we are today.
I can tell you too that the appointment after that we had with the neurologist 1 month after seeing Dr. Tony, couldn't believe what was happening. Michael was standing straighter. He wasn't running around the room anymore. He was actually sitting on the medical bed or whatever, answering the questions. He was performing all of the physical tests very well, much improved. He was just amazed at how things had changed with him. On a physical level, he was trying to kind of put it together and figure out how that had happened, because
Yeah, you could see it was confusing at first. It was like, well, how do we go from the worst case to a drastic and sudden and rapid change back towards normal? So it definitely piqued his curiosity. So, and we were just starting with the Blair method, so we were also just wanting to make sure that it was going to stick, because we had tried so many different things. We didn't want to get our hopes up too much, but we were seeing great progress, and that's really continued, and you know, we've seen him continue to improve, and throughout the few months we've been going.
A lot better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. You know, it's done wonders. We're walking back through that history. We're walking backwards through the history that Dr. Tony gave us. Said from the head injury, where he hit the fridge, to where we were at the hospital twice. We're moving rapidly through that, and we expect to get very quickly back to, you know, no more tics, no more ADHD symptoms. You know, definitely
no
recommended.
more pseudotumor cerebri.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yes, and I know that I have recommended Dr. Tony to many people, and I'm very grateful for what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
He's gone above and beyond making sure Michael is taken care of, and I just wish that there was some way I could thank him, and I just don't even know how I would do that, how that would even amount to the way that he has blessed our family with what he has done for Michael, with what he has done for friends of ours. Who have also seen him and been seeing him, and it's just, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.